Rett Burroughs here from Military Grade Metal. I want to introduce Keith Dombrowski. He's the creator of the band Nightfall.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Do we call this a band or is this a collaboration?
No, it is. The idea behind it is definitely to maybe at some point become a band fully, but right now it is definitely a project because I'm kind of the band. Hold on one second.
Yep.
Sorry about this.
Nope, not at all. We all have, I got 3 kids. Mark's got 3 kids. We don't even need to edit the kids. It's fine.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, no worries, man.
They're being loud. They're being loud right now.
Yeah. Mine are upstairs pounding around knowing about it. But anyway, yeah. So collaboration versus type thing.
Yeah, I started it as a project. Like that's the initial idea. I didn't know what I wanted to do because I was just writing some music. That's all I was doing when I founded it, and I knew I wanted to release something. But the idea was, if you guys know, Magnus Carlsen, he does something similar where he basically writes all this music, puts it out, and then gets all these guest vocalists and musicians to come play. And that's how he gets a lot of the albums that he puts out that they never actually became a band or do touring or anything like that. He just kind of does it like that one. I thought that was kind of a cool idea for what was happening in my situation. And so I used that as kind of like a template. And also I'm a huge fan of Avantasia. Avantasia in the very beginning did very much the same thing where they started off as just kind of like a studio project for Toby. And then, over time it kind of transformed and got bigger and bigger. And then he decided to take it on become a touring band, so to speak. So he had certain players that were always reoccurring in all the albums and then went on tour with them, and that's how Avantasia kind of became its thing, and that's how kind of Ed Guy took a back seat. So again, seeing that Toby and Magnus had done these things, I was like, well, shoot, I'm gonna be turning 40 in a couple of years. My kids are getting to the point where they're more self-sufficient. I haven't played music in a long time. Here we go. Let's do this, and let's find a name that suits where I'm at mentally in my life. And one of the things that I wanted to do was create an image, a brand that was all about the age of chivalry and about knights and honor, and because I was seeing so much in media and just in people in general where those things were being lost. The kindness was going away, and I wanted to bring the kindness back, protecting the weak, all of that stuff. Everything that a knight is supposed to be, I wanted to bring that back. And I was a huge fan of Nightwish and a huge fan of, things like the TV show Nightfall. And I was like, it's a really cool name. Let's see if anybody's got the name trademarked for a band. And I did a thorough search to trade, and I found that nobody had trademarked Nightfall. And I was like, this is the one. This is the one that we do, Nightfall, because it's reminiscent of everything that I'm wanting.
Yeah, that's really impressive, man. And I love how you talk about, the age of chivalry, because, you have to be there for you have to have your battle buddies. You got to have someone to rely on. If we don't have someone to believe in, then there is no hope, right? And, that's an important topic for us here at Military Grade Metal is suicide prevention, which is a serious problem with American veterans. And you have your own story of bullying and your own struggle with suicide. Your music video, Farewell, with Jessica Mercy, Patrick Goebel, Pete Rockcliffe, and George Acker, that's very, very personal for you.
Yep.
And
very much.
The loss of your mother. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So Farewell, so let me go back. So in 2017, May 31st of 2017, my mother finally succumbed to Alzheimer's, which in my opinion is honestly, again, this is my opinion, but from watching what happened to her, it's one of the worst diseases that can happen to a person, period. My mother was a teacher for 40 plus years. She taught, 4th grade and all of that stuff. And she was an intellectual. She was an English major. She loved to write, so to not have her mind at the end of all things was very, very, very difficult to watch. And it was something for me that was left completely unresolved because of the fact that when she fell really ill, when she stopped to be able to function, speak, remember how to use a phone or something like that, I was 1,500 miles away. She was in Massachusetts and I was in Kentucky. And it was right during the busiest time of the year for me, working for a company that's busy during the holidays. So I couldn't get vacation time or anything to go out and visit her. And by the time I did get secure that time, she was already comatose. She was already unable to talk, unable to identify who I was. She was gone. So I had already lost her. And the guilt from that killed me for years and caused severe depression. And I never knew how to kind of handle that, or I've never found an outlet to help me cope with that grief. And I was overcompensating, and I was angry, and I was experiencing all of these things that just would not go away. So when I started writing again, I started writing at the very end of 2019 is when I got my first keyboard in like 10 years. Right, so I had sold everything. I had no musical instruments in my house, with the exception of an old electric guitar that was given to me by a friend, probably again like 8 years prior to all of this. So I tuned that up, and I started teaching myself guitar a few years ago, and I bought a new keyboard workstation and just started playing, honestly. And that's how it started. And then I started writing new songs for the first time in a decade. And one of the first ones that I wrote, or I started writing, was Farewell. I just started thinking about my mom and thinking about that I wanted to do something that would pay tribute to her. And I didn't know where I was going to go with it. Initially, it was just a piano melody. That's all it was. It was just a simple piano melody, ballad, right? And it was only like maybe a couple minutes long. And what ended up happening is I wrote that piece of it, and then that ended up going on the back burner. Then towards 2021, 2022, I picked it back up and started writing more to it. And I did that because, and I think the reason why I put it back to bed was because I had taken on the responsibility of taking care of my dad. So my dad had become very ill physically and stuff like that. And he was dying, essentially. And I brought him, instead of putting him into a home, we brought him here to us in Kentucky. I sold his house, brought him here to Kentucky. And because I wasn't able to be there for my mother, I knew that I was going to be there for my father. There was nothing that was going to stop me from doing that. So my wife and I, even though he was unable to walk and change himself and go to the bathroom himself, my wife and I took on the responsibility of caring for him for almost 2 years is how long it was. And then he passed away on his birthday, of all days. He was 78. He was 78 years old, and he passed away on his birthday. And I had written a song for him, so Farewell was still put to bed at this point. And I wrote a song for him called "Not Ready to Let You Go" because I wasn't. He was my Superman. I didn't want to live my life without both of my parents, and I didn't want my dad gone. I wanted him to spend more time with my kids. So I wrote that song. It was the first song I'd recorded in years. And I wrote that one from start to finish within like 4 days. And I played it at his funeral. And everybody was like, this is amazing, And I played it for him. I actually completed it 3 days before he passed away. And I played him a phone recording version of the song. And he told me after he broke into tears, and he told me shortly thereafter that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This was my destiny. Right, and that he was sorry for not supporting me more throughout my life in the music stuff because he didn't really believe in it. And he's sorry for that, and that this is what I need to do, that this is what I was born to do. So after that, I made the decision to create Nightfall, and I started working on the music. And, Farewell was always there in the back burner. I mean, I started with Waiting for You, but then Farewell became this huge thing for me, and I turned it into this absolutely epic track because what I realized is that I needed an outlet to deal with all the grief that I had been through. And Farewell turned into the 5 stages of grief. So if you actually listen to the song from start to finish, the very beginning with the pretty melody and stuff like that, that's the depression, that's the solace, the sadness. Okay. Then when it starts to, pick up and the lyrics are talking about you're seeing her places, like, phantom visions of her is basically, you can picture what's going on. And the video depicts that too. Like you see the the mom, like it's memories of the mom and the video. That's the denial. You don't want to admit that person's gone, that this is still possible, right? So that's the second stage of grief. And then when it goes to the instrumental and it comes in hard with those horns and then it starts getting, crazy with the heavy guitars, that's your anger stage. And then when it transitions again to like the solos, the two guitar solos. So the first guitar solo was done by Patrick, and then the second guitar solo leading to the very end of the song was done by George. And those solos represent bargaining. Then when it transitions one final time to the piano and that final chorus that Jessica sings, that's your acceptance. So the song literally takes you through the entire journey of the 5 stages of grief. And I did this for several reasons. I initially wasn't going to put this on the Nightfall album because it was wildly different from the fantasy themes, right?
Yeah.
But I also just knew it was the perfect outro to the album. And I also wanted to use it as a platform to help everybody else that was dealing with this level of grief that I had been dealing with for years and years and years. I was hoping that through the healing power of music, that this song and my story could help other people cope and not, have to go through those stages as heavily. Because one thing that I've always believed about music is that music is therapy, music is healing for people. And I figured that if people realized they weren't alone, and that somebody like me who's putting this out there for the world to see and laying my heart on my sleeve, so to speak, that they know they're not alone, have somebody that they can relate to and something to help them cope with everything that's going on in their life, whether it's a death of an animal, a death of a parent, a death of a child, whatever it may be, dealing with that grief, this should help.
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on. But what was like, so, seeing you laying in that video, being resuscitated, right,
yeah.
on the gurney, had a profound effect. So what was the catalyst for you to realize that, suicide is a permanent problem a permanent solution to a temporary problem? It
took me dying. It took me actually dying. So this happened, that part of the story happened when I was around 15 years old, and it was due to extreme bullying. And when I say extreme bullying, I was beat up at recess all the time. There was an incident where I went to go to the bathroom and some boys jumped me in the bathroom and forced me to lick the urinal. Things like that were happening on the physical side, and of course that has a mental toll. Unfortunately, and one of the reasons why I included this in my mother's story is because she did have a part to play in all of this, because some parents are in denial about what's happening to their kids, and unfortunately in this circumstance she was in denial about what was happening to me. So when I finally came clean about everything that was going on, she didn't want to believe that, kids in her school that she taught at could be that vicious to her own son. So she dismissed me initially. And I told her that if this is how it was going to be, then I just might as well end my life right now because nobody's got my back. I don't have anybody looking out for me anymore. And she told me that I didn't have the guts to do it.
Oh, wow.
Which is like the worst possible thing you can say at that point in time. Now, this is something that horrified her for the rest of her life because she didn't realize the impact of what was going on. So, and I'll be completely honest with you what I did. So my mother at the time, she was born in the 1940s, so she always believed in a healthy pharmacy that, she had everything that could cure almost any ailment that a person could possibly have. And she also believed in a backup of a backup. So if there was one bottle of NyQuil, there was 3 bottles of NyQuil. If there was one package of Sudafed, there was 3 packages of Sudafed. My dad was on some pretty heavy drugs at the time, so he had hydrocodones. He had gabapentin, so some pretty severe drugs as well inside the house. And because back then there was no opioid crisis, they could have as big of a supply as they needed or wanted. So I took well over 500 pills, well over. I took multiple bottles of NyQuil. I took multiple bottles of cough syrup. I took every one of my dad's gabapentins. I took every one of his hydrocodones. I meant for me to go to sleep, and I meant to not wake up. That was the whole idea. I pumped myself so full of everything that I knew I was going to kill myself. And I did that, and I went to sleep. And there was a divine intervention, because I woke up. When I tell you that it felt like someone was splitting my skull with an axe, that's not an exaggeration. That's the closest thing that I can say that is what it felt like. And it was just pain. Like, no, I woke up screaming. My body was dying, and it was fighting every inch of the way to try and survive. So I woke up, and the pain was that bad that it caused me to just scream and just not stop screaming. And then I started to projectile vomit. Like, everything that was in my stomach started to come up. My parents come running in. My mom sees the pills in the vomit everywhere, and now it clicks. She realized what had happened. I have a vague memory of her crying. I have a vague memory of her screaming for my dad to get the keys, to get me, so they carried me out to the car. Somewhere between our house and, we lived in Massachusetts at the time, there was the closest hospital to us would have been the Clinton Hospital. So they were taking me to Clinton to be seen. And somewhere during that 10-minute drive to get to the hospital, I died. Wow. And I remember certain things about it. I don't know how spiritual y'all are or how spiritual everybody watching this is going to be, but I remember leaving myself behind. I remember seeing myself there, like I was out of my body. And I remember seeing what was going on. I saw my parents crying. I saw them upset. I saw them my dad hugging my mom, not knowing what to do. I saw the fear in their eyes. I saw all of it. And then I also saw the technicians or the nurses or whoever it was grab the paddles and paddle me back. In between all of that, I went somewhere. Like, I had it, when I say complete out of body, like, I left Earth. I was not here. I was in someplace else. And one of the reasons why I ended up coming back is an old family member stopped me at the gates. I was in this sea of mist where you couldn't see anything. Couldn't see anything in front of you, and I just kept walking forward, and eventually I came to a rock. And there was a path to the left and a path to the right. The right had a white gate that opened. You couldn't see beyond it. It was dark beyond that. And to the path looked like it was going down into some kind of like foresty area. It was the weirdest thing. Sitting on that rock was my uncle, who had passed away from a heart attack a few years prior, right? A couple years prior. And he was smoking a cigarette like he always used to, his Marlboro Red. And he, in that gruff voice, and I don't do him justice, but in that gruff voice that he had that I've always will recognize, he said, "Where you going, boy?" And I pointed towards the gate at first, and I said, "I'm going to go over there." And he's like, "No, you're not." And then I pointed down there and was about to take a step, and he said, "No, try again." And then he said, "Do you know what you're doing? Do you know what you're doing to your parents? Do you know what you're doing? You're not done yet. You can't come here. You've got to go back. I'm sending you back that way. You're going to turn around and go back."
Yeah.
And then that's the last thing I remember. And then I saw myself being paddled. I'd come back, and then I woke up. I gasped. They, pumped my stomach. They gave me charcoal, that nasty black liquid that they put in you to make sure that it's all flushed out of your system. I mean, I was in they kept me in the mental ward for like a month after that, and then I had to do counseling for years. They put me on Zoloft, and there was a lot that was involved in that. And during that journey, shortly thereafter, I mean, I was still a kid, so I still didn't fully grasp it. It wasn't only until I became a little bit more of an adult to where I really realized just the impact of what had happened to me. And I kept quiet about my story for a very long time. My parents didn't want me talking about it because, it was a stain on my life in their eyes.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But then it opened my eyes. I had an incident where a friend of mine's daughter committed suicide and succeeded. And she was about the same age as me at the time, and that was eye-opening. And that was like in 2012. And then during COVID, there were a lot of seminars about mental health, and there was everyone staying at home was beginning to struggle. So they were having all of these seminars where they brought in professionals to help talk to us about the work from home stuff and how we're coping, how to deal with the mental aspect of it. And they because we had a few representatives in our company that had either committed suicide or died of a drug overdose, something like that. So there was a lot of that going on. And for some reason, don't know why, they asked if anybody wanted to share a story, and I decided to share my story. And the response that I got from my peers, I didn't know you went through that. I've been going through similar emotions right now. You just helped me so much by sharing this. All of a sudden, I started getting all of this positivity that I could help people with what was going on in my life and by telling my story and my truths. And so I decided to start doing that. So, when people get to know me, if I find out that they're struggling mentally, I'll be like, hey, let me share with you my story so that you know that you're not alone. And I talk to them about how they're feeling. I talk to them about how I felt and the things that I've done to try and cope and try to help them find their outlet to help them cope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so that we can save lives.
And that story really now explains the art that you put into Nightfall. It's I can see it in everything that you've done and from your perspective. And you mentioned focusing on your kids, because you said you went, you had a year or a 10-year gap after Anaria to, start writing again. And you said, but you started a family in the meantime. So, the fact that you are there to keep them safe and actually make sure that they are emotionally strong. How do you feel? How do you see this when you talk to your kids about this?
Well, I've had to talk with them about this stuff quite a bit because they've already dealt with so much death. So since 2017, we've lost a total of 15 family members and friends.
Wow.
15. So they lost my mom, my dad. They lost my wife's father, or it's their stepfather, but he's there. He was there all the time. My brother-in-law was military, and he lost his life as well, due to drug situations and all that stuff, due to the PTSD aspect of it. So and that's just a few. There was uncles, there was a great aunt, there was a grandfather on my wife's side. So there's been so much loss in such a short period of time that my children have had to deal with, that I decided to be just completely honest and upfront with them about all of this stuff at this point, because they need to understand that we are mortal and stuff can happen. And I know that in some cases, my oldest son struggles, he's very emotional, so he struggles with having these conversations. He's deathly afraid right now because I'm having a major surgery on my neck in about a month. And there is a major risk factor to it. So he's deathly afraid something's going to happen to me. And the other two are not so bad with it. They understand, what's happened, what's going on. They understand how to grieve. But my oldest son is autistic, so he has a hard time processing things,
right, more
so than other people do. So I have to spend a lot more time calming him down, bringing him off of the ledge. I worry about him because he's that emotional, so I'm constantly trying to find ways to toughen him up mentally without being tough on him, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're the audience here that, our family that revolves around what Mark and I and our family is experiencing. You're spot on the issues and concerns that we want to try to help people with. And, we totally understand it. You got to influence them without forcing them. Right.
Right. That's and that's what I try to be. I'm trying to be the best dad that I can be. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to not. My parents were too strict, right? There's that fine line in between being too lenient and too strict, and I'm trying to find that middle ground with my kids. And they've just dealt with so much that I've had to force myself into some pretty uncomfortable conversations earlier than I wanted to do it. But I feel like that helps them mature at in a better way. That they're definitely, you can tell that they have a maturity about them much more than some of the other kids their age.
Well, that's good, because that's all you can do is you can teach them how to be strong, how to deal, how to cope, and how to lead as best as you can, and then they're going to go live their life. And now, as your kids influence, your music, your theme. Again, going back to the chivalry, and this latest project, Nightfall. It's a combination of symphonic and power metal, and you got a tribute to the '80s, which you are just freaking pulling at my heartstrings, man. I mean, you're speaking my love language here, and because you're doing this from a perspective of love and loyalty. My family is my military family. The guys and girls that I've served in combat with, that's my family. And, it's, we help you raise each other's kids. And, we are this big tribe, and it's really impressive, how you go through and kind of make your own genre, because you have a lot of ties in your music here to different genres of metal, because there's only one type of music, and that's metal, and the rest are genres, right? But you've tied all this together, and you throw it in that tribute to the '80s, and as we go through some of your songs here, there's some things that you really hit home for me. Could you talk a little bit about that and how you just kind of got your blend and got your style? Because whenever you had Dee Wolf, you pulled her from you found her on Fiverr and produced "Waiting for You." What a great song! I mean, that gives me some Brother Fire Tribe vibes, but mixed in with some old school Foreigner. Right? I mean, when I was listening to that song, there's parts of that song where I actually remember their, what was it, records, their album records, like their greatest hits type thing. That I grew up with in the 90s when I was in high school. I actually already added this song to our military grade metal shred sequence playlist. So it's out there. And, it's just really cool how you blended this. So how did you really come up with this style?
So I knew that I didn't. So there's so many bands out there that just focus on one thing, and then that's the entire uniformity for the entire album. I dared to be different. Everyone tells you that you've got to have your own little, niche going on, so you want to make sure that your album is uniform. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Pardon my French. When you're a musician, you make what you love. That's it. And I'm influenced by multiple genres over multiple decades. And symphonic metal is absolutely my biggest favorite, obviously. But, my first metal song was Symphony of Destruction by Megadeth, which is completely different than symphonic metal, really. And then prior to that, I loved musicals, for example. Like I was big in my degrees in musical theater. So I used to perform and I played like Joseph and his Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Like I did community theaters and all that kind of stuff. I did that for years, right? So I also love the theatrical side, and I brought in the theatrical element. Like if you listen to all the songs, they all have a little bit of that theatrical element. And the third song on the album, Remember My Name, is like Disney metal. That's pretty much what it is. Like it's theatrical metal. It's musical metal. That's what it is. I took a gamble with that song because I didn't know how people were going to like that. But I think it came out badass, and everybody that worked on it thinks it came out badass.
It did come out badass. I actually have a note that said it reminded me of Leaves' Eyes. So the band Leaves' Eyes. The Viking kind of genre, melodic. I saw him play with Battle Beast and Sabaton. And with the first time I listened to Remember My Name, I think I was 10. It was okay. This. I went right to Leaves' Eyes whenever I heard that, because you're right. It has that theatrical theme to it. So yeah.
Yep. So I've kind of blended all that together. And then I also, because I'm so influenced by the 80s, because everything from, like you just said, Foreigner, to Van Halen, to Bon Jovi, to Motley Crue, to Winger, to Danger. Danger is actually my favorite one. And they're like the ones that came in towards the end there too, and they have only like one album.
Yeah. You said Danger, right?
No, they have two albums.
You said Danger.
Yeah, Danger has like two albums that were like big.
Yeah.
that were big. They had their self-titled, and then they had Screw It, and then everything they did after that was kind of like no one remembers that.
Yes.
Because it was too far out of the 80s. I still remember their third album, Cockroach, though.
Wasn't their biggest song "Let's Get Naughty Naughty"? Wasn't that their?
The song's literally called Naughty Naughty. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
That was their biggest, and then they had a power ballad too. Their power ballad was "I Still Think About You."
That's right.
And the second big song they had off of their self-titled was Bang Bang.
That's right. Bang Bang is it. Yes.
But what's crazy is if you go and you listen to their second album, Screw It, that album's even better than the first one.
I agree. I agree a lot. It's like Tora Tora, their second album, Wild America, is, and then I also tie in with Bang Tango too, right? And Psychotic Cafe. I love that whole genre. That was like, I had a perm mullet when I joined the Army, when I shipped off to the Army. I still have my jean jacket with all my patch jacket and stuff, and all those bands are on there, right? I get it, man. That's awesome how you're tying all this together. Again, you're tugging at my heartstrings.
I tied it. Again, Waiting for You was more than just a regular tribute. Like, it was for the 80s, but it was also because my wife's dad had passed, and he was just this massive, like, 80s guru. Loved Van Halen, was one of his favorites. The piano riff from Waiting for You is actually inspired by Right Now from Van Halen. That's kind of where the idea of I was like, what's iconic? What's iconic, from that era? And I was like, Eddie's guitar playing is iconic with the way he does his solos and stuff like that. And, there's a lot of synths and piano sound. So what if I just created one that was very piano driven, kind of like Van Halen's Right Now? So I sat down and I just started tinkering with ideas, and Waiting for You just kind of came out of nowhere. And then when we were recording the guitars, because I do demo guitars, I don't play the guitars myself. I'll play like an idea of what's, and then I have a guitarist come in, and I kind of guide them through what I'm hearing in my head, and they kind of play it. And that's kind of what happened with Patrick. Patrick comes in, and I'm like, okay, so here's the rhythm guitars, and he's like, you do want leads over this, right? And I was like, yeah, but I can't play leads. That's why you're here. So he came up with a couple ideas, and I'm like, here's what I'm saying, and here's what I'm hearing in my head, and I'm going, no, and I'm doing that, and then he just starts mimicking what I'm doing. Like, it was pretty cool how he was able to do that, actually. But that's how we kind of got those solos, especially at the end of Waiting for You, where he kind of goes, ripping on it at the very end, which is like one of the best outro solos I've heard in a while. So that's how we got Waiting for You. And then the message in the song, like so many songs in the 80s are all about like a failed relationship or someone getting dumped or heartbreak and all that stuff. So I was like, let's keep this classic 80s and let's make this, all right, this is like, a person that's literally waiting for their, knight in shining armor, so I can tie it back to the Nightfall stuff. So I tied it back to the Nightfall stuff by making it, this girl is like waiting for that person that may never come because she's got the idea of what she wants so high on the pedestal that she may be overreaching, right? So that was kind of the arc there. And then, a lot of times when you're failing, you turn to things that you shouldn't turn to, like drinking. So I put that in there as well. Like, I made sure that I hit all of the themes that I wanted to talk about within that song, and I flowed it in a way that most people listening to it probably won't even recognize all those themes.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really impressive. And as you moved away from Waiting for You, now the track order that I listen to, I really do appreciate you giving me this listen. Children of Time, you had there as number one. That kind of tied. I heard Nightwish through and through in that song. Old school Nightwish, like Tarja Turin type Nightwish style.
That's my biggest influence. Yep, that is my biggest influence, and I definitely, on a couple of the songs, I wanted to try to very much, in a way, tribute to the fact that Thomas's writing is what got me into doing this in the first place. Like, without him, you don't have me.
Wow. Yeah, his solo stuff is awesome. Yeah, I love Scrooge McDuck too.
I love Scrooge too.
Your other song, War Cries. When I listen to War Cries, that's going to be a very popular beat.
Right.
I heard Windrose. You know, what are they? Italian troll or dwarf metal?
They're dwarf metal.
Right?
Dwarf metal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Diggy Diggy Hole like came to my head whenever, you know, at the very beginning of your song. Then you transition to a completely different type of thing throughout War Cries. Tell me about that.
So with War Cries happened in pieces. So I was really pissed off at a situation at work, and I knew I needed to, before I even went to go spend time with my family, I knew I needed to get my aggression out. So I sat down and I wrote the riffage to War Cries, and originally it was called Wrath the Fury God, because I was just angry. So I wrote that one little piece, but I didn't know where to go with it, because after I was done with that one little section, I was just like, crap. So I put it down. I went and spent time with my family, and I'd say probably that was a month later. I do a lot of my writing when I'm in the bathroom, and whether, you know, taking a shower and stuff like that, I'll hum things to myself, I'll sing in the shower, do that type of thing. Well, this particular time, I started stamping my feet, and that's how I got the pound, pound. So I was like, pound, pound, hit the ground. So all of a sudden, those words just came into my head, and I was like, holy shit, this is going to be a Viking song.
Yes.
Okay. So then I got that part out of the way, and I couldn't figure out where to transition from the chorus to the next part of the song. And then I randomly went back and heard Wrath the Fury God, and I was like, click, put those two together, and you have War Cries. So I put all that together, and then I was like, I got to build it first, though. So I decided to go back and do like the thunderous drums and the build going up to the chorus. I decided to add the anvil hit to mimic a blacksmith making weapons.
Yep.
I just found all these like little sonic things that I wanted to put in there. And then I knew that I wanted a big sounding chorus, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that with just me and with a couple of other vocalists. So May of last year, I put out a call to the independent music community, and I made a video for it, and I said, hey, this is a song that I'm planning on doing. Here's a snippet of it. I would like for anybody that's interested to message me, and we'll try to get you guys on this playing the Viking army in the chorus. And got a bunch of responses, you know, and I think in total, like, because people gave us sometimes more than one version. Like, some people were giving us like a lower version, a higher version, a screaming version, a clean version. Like, there was so many different things that were coming our way. And I think I did 5 or 6 different takes myself of repitching my voice in different ways. So like, I did one with a growl, one with a clean, one that was higher pitched, one that was lower pitched, one that was harmonized. So I did a whole bunch of them. I think we ended up with 70 vocal tracks total.
Oh, wow.
For the chorus.
That's a lot of editing.
That was a lot of editing. I felt bad for Sergio, who's my producer and engineer. He's amazing at this. But we had to, you know, of course, like, tune each one of these individually and, you know, put them together, blend them together, and then we had to do different versions of the blend, because sometimes the guys were too strong, the girls were too strong. So we had to work really hard to get that blend right where we wanted it to be. But after that, and during all of this, I had been put in touch with Stephanie Keogh through my friend Pete Rockcliffe, who had already joined the project to sing for me. And he was like, you know who else would be really good, I think, would be Stephanie. And so I reached out to her. We had some great conversations, and she looked through my demo list, and she heard the concept for War Cries, and she was like, I want that one. And I was like, awesome. And I was like, you know, the lyrics aren't completely done for it, but here's what I've got so far. Like, within a week, she came back to me with finished lyrics. She's like, this just happened. I wasn't planning on writing it, but it just happened. And that's what, you know, so she helped me even complete the song. So she's credited with lyrics and on that as well. But yeah, and then I just made a couple of other final touches on that one. And Patrick did the guitars, and we wanted them to be, you know, nice and heavy and meaty, and he did a good job with that, making that happen. And boom, War Cries was one of the last ones to be mixed as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. How that was put together. You put so many different mixes in there. Again, you keep going back to, you know, whenever I hear that anvil, as you're, you know, it's just that hard work and that constant you know, grinding, which is absolutely amazing.
Yep. Love that one. That's one of my favorites. That's one of my kids' favorites too. Like my son, every single time he hears it, he does stamps his foot, pound, pound. He loves it.
Yeah.
He thinks it's fantastic. That's my 6-year-old Tristan.
I can't wait to just have it on repeat and be cranking it on Spotify. Man, it's going to be awesome. What about The Hero Walks Alone? Because I texted you when I was listening to that after about 3 or 4 times. I think I actually specifically told you I was cranking on that too. I got an Epica kind of Storm the Sorrow vibe type feel on that, but I don't know. I was kind of out in left field in that one.
I definitely didn't channel Epica for that one. I can tell you that. It was originally, that one was born out of a piano riff. That was just me tinkering around on the piano. And then I had this idea that I wanted to do something. I wanted to do like if I were to imagine Amaranth doing symphonic metal rather than their electronica, that's what I imagine The Hero Walks Alone to be.
Okay, so, I respect the heck out of that. That nailed it. Thank you.
Yeah,
I got to change my notes on that one because remember we didn't rehearse this, right? We didn't I'm literally throwing Keith out names of bands that I feel that are relatable. So we're doing pretty good right now, tying this stuff together. So yes, so Amaranth has nailed it. Thanks.
Yeah, Amaranth, because I always wondered, I was like, man, they're so electronic and stuff like that. What would happen if they did a song that was fully symphonic metal? You know, with the high voice, the lower voice, and then the growls, because that's their signature. They have the 3 different vocals, right? And the idea, like originally, it was going to be a female vocal, a guy vocal, and a growling vocal. And like what the artists that I pictured singing, you know, I pictured someone operatic like Tarja, and I pictured, for the low vocals, I pictured somebody like YouTuber Jonathan Young, who I absolutely adore. I'm not gonna lie, I even reached out to Jonathan through his page to see if I could even get a hold of him to see if he would want to, but never got a response because he's busy. I get it, but hopefully someday he sees it and we'll do a version of it with us. But we'll see. But then I met Pete. Pete changed my entire world because I was like, holy crap, he's a sopranost. He can sing soprano, and he sings on Children of Time and on this one, Hero Walks Alone. And then he does the narration for Farewell with his beautiful British accent. And he does he's one of the singers on the ensemble piece, which is Destiny Calling itself. And I was like, man, so Pete is this amazing male sopranost that can do things that most women can't do. How cool would it be to have him start this song off, you know, and then, you know, he's going to be singing on Children of Time too, but I didn't have him on Children of Time when I was thinking about this. So how cool would it be to have Pete sing the female part, right? And then I would find someone to sing the low part, right? I never initially anticipated that it was going to be me. That was never even a thought in my mind because I don't really sing anymore at all. But as we were going through the process and I did the demo for it, Sergio, who's my producer, he was like, dude, you have a really good baritone. Like, I think you should try to do a real version of this. So he pushed me, and the version that we have that's on the album actually does have me singing that gritty vocal. And then I was introduced to Marcos Pinade by Stephanie, who worked with him on a project called Volcata. And he's a really good growl vocalist, very good growl vocalist. And I heard some of his stuff, and then I had him attempt this just to see if it would work, and he gave me an amazing take on the growls. Because I knew the growls that I put in here were fast-paced, right? It's not easy to take a breath and do the vocals for the growls that I put in this song. But he nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. So that's how this song was basically formed. And the lyrics for it, for the longest time, I didn't know what I was going to do for the lyrics. And then I used to have to wait in line to pick up my kids. And it was like an hour wait sometimes. So I would be on my phone playing the instrumental of this song over and over and over again. And I just started coming up with this story of a knight going into battle one final time, protecting his people, protecting his country, protecting his friends, you know, and dying at the end, because the hero truly does walk alone. When you're selfless, you end up you end up the hero, but you end up doing it by yourself on your own.
And you're giving everything. Yeah, you give everything.
Right. And it's also a metaphor for parenting. You know, as parents, you are your kids' heroes. And when you go, you know, you're remembered as, I mean, if you were a good parent, you are remembered as their hero, their Superman, like their knight in shining armor, the person that did everything for them. And, you know, so it's a metaphor for starting life and protecting, and then ending life and dying.
Yeah. Now, what about Destiny Calling? That's the title track, right? So what was the decision on the title and then the organization and where you play it out in your album?
So go back to the story I told you about my dad, right? He told me this was my destiny. And I knew that if I was going to break into the scene, I needed something that was going to mirror image his final words to me. He told me in 2 different sentences that this was my destiny and that I had a calling to do this. So Destiny Calling is how I got that title. And the way that I wrote this is it's very much fantasy, but it's also kind of a call to action to musicians in general, right? Because we as musicians have the ability to do many things, evoke powerful emotions with music, everything from, you know, sadness to happiness to anger. Like, we can do it all if we put the right words and the right sounds together, right? So all musicians that have a chance to help people through music, this is your destiny calling. This is what you should be doing with your life. Don't give up on your dream, because that was the big thing. My dad was telling me, like, I screwed up. I should have encouraged you. I should have tried to help you with your dreams, and I didn't do that. Now that I'm dying, don't give up on your dreams, son. Don't. You know, so this is my way of reiterating his words and allowing it to echo for all eternity for anyone that wants to listen to this song. You know, this is it. We are the hymn, you know? Yeah. We are the voice. You know, that's the thing. And that's why the lyrics are written the way that they are. It's also talking about, like, the phoenix rising from the ashes, you know, type of thing too. Like, if you listen to the chorus of it, you know, it talks about nightfall cries. And when I say cries, not cries tears, but like this is like a battle cry. Nightfall cries. Yep. From the ashes we rise. Yeah. It's awesome. Our destiny calling. That song was meant to be powerful, and I knew that musically it's one of the best on the album, and that's why I wanted the album to be named that. It's also got some reminiscent of Nightwish, old school Nightwish in there too, with the beginning riff and everything. It's got heavier guitars, just like, you know, Nightwish would have in there. And then I wanted it to be an ensemble piece, so I wanted it to have a bunch of the vocalists that were singing on this album to have certain little roles in there. So, like, Jessica sings first, and then I sing, and then we sing together. Then we have the first big chorus with everybody. Then Pete sings, Stephanie sings, then they sing together, and then we end the track with another huge chorus. And then Jessica hits a high C, a C6 at the very end. Her ending note of the song is that high C6, which was just amazing. She was not expecting to do that. She went for it, and I was so pleased that she did. And I love that song. That song is probably one of my favorites that I've ever written, period. Just not from just the musical standpoint, but from the message that's behind that song.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a good transition too, because, you know, like you said, it's like a hymn, but it's a transition into an anthem. And the Musketeer anthem, whenever I listen to that, I see the whole crowd bouncing up and down in the mosh pit as you playing that song.
Everyone yelling, all hail.
It's epic. And the guitar, the background with the violin and guitars going in and out, like it was that really caught my ear. And the instrumental version you put out on Spotify, when I heard that one, I heard that song different with the vocals and then without the vocals, and the drums really came out on the instrumental. Just something that caught with, you know, my speakers here, and, you know, and me as I'm thinking through this. That was a really impressive song. I just feel like I'm gonna sit there and bob my head, and, you know, we're gonna end up jumping up and down in the mosh pit or something someday when you guys take this thing on the road. which I'm really hoping for someday.
I'm hoping. If we can pick up the funds to be able to pay everybody to be able to do this, sure, there is a possibility that we could get some kind of touring version of Nightfall together. That is possible for sure. And I would love to do it. I mean, I would love to be like Avantasia 2.0 and kind of do what Toby did and start it off as a project and then turn it into something like that. Or Delane, for that matter. Delane was just a studio album too, and they ended up becoming a touring band. So I would love for something like that to happen with Nightfall. And I love the Musketeer. The Musketeer has not gotten as much love as I hoped that it would. I hope that over time people will like that one and appreciate that one more. Same thing with Remember My Name. Those are what I call my history lessons. So I wrote those songs because I am also trying to do things where I can teach through music, right? My kids are young, and what's cool is crafting these songs and having them listen to it. I'm teaching, like Remember My Name, I'm teaching them about the Iliad without them actually having to read the Iliad. I'm giving them the basic story of the Iliad and the story of Achilles without them even realizing it, right? It's education through music without them even knowing. Same thing with the Musketeer. The Musketeer is, again, teaching them a wonderful piece of literature that they may not ever read if they're not hearing it in the song, right? So this is Alexander Dumas's one of his classics, and I wanted to put that in there, and the riff came, and just the idea of the Musketeer, the all for one for all, just kind of popped into my head, and I was like, this is what needs to happen on this song. And then I turned it into kind of like, again, another history lesson. One of my plans for the future is I'm going to be doing, I haven't got it all together yet, but I'm going to be doing a concept album. The concept album is based on one of Alexander's other stories, The Count of Monte Cristo. And I've already written the opening track to it, which is a metal sea shanty.
Nice. That's going to be perfect.
I can't wait to bring that one out. The album's going to be called "The King Is to You," which is the phrase that Edmond and the Count Mondego would say to each other whenever they, were king for the day. Whenever they did something great, they would always say "The King's to You" throughout that entire story. So I want the album to be called "The King's to You."
Nice. Yeah, I think that's fitting. I see this song on a video game, probably maybe an Assassin's Creed or something like that. Style video game. I just feel that. What about you Raise Your Fist? I'm personally biased. Again, we have not rehearsed this, but so I may be way off here. But this thing kicked off for me as Battle Beast.
Yep,
it kicked off. Okay. Oh my God. Because I named my daughter after Nora Lohimo, right? So my daughter's name is Nora, and everyone thinks that they misspelled her name because we got two O's in her name, Noora. Right. And she was in here running around earlier, but it's like again going back to the anthem kind of metal. Anyway, Battle Beast is what really made me get excited about Raise Your Fist.
That was written with Nora's voice in mind. Like I had this dream that I was going to try and see if Nora would be able to sing this, but she's gotten so big now. Because I met her in 2018 when they still hadn't gotten huge yet. They were big in Europe, but not over here in the States yet. They were touring with Camelot and Delane as the opening act. And after the show, she happened to come out to the merch table. My wife saw that and rushed us downstairs so that I could meet her and get a picture with her and all of that stuff, which was absolutely amazing. That's one of my favorite memories to date. But I love her to death. Her voice is just the most amazing thing. So when I wrote Raise Your Fist, I was channeling every ounce of her and Battle Beast as I could into the idea of that song with that heavy synth, those synth sounds in the background. And I always, pictured that raspy voice that she had. And originally I tried approaching Nit Vallow to sing that, which was the original singer of Battle Beast. Yeah, but she was too busy. It looked like she might be able to do it, but then it just didn't. It just never was able to come to fruition. So then I started asking around, who could do this, and then I got Jessica to do a demo version of it, and she sounded really, really, really good on it too. And then I got a vocalist out of Mexico, Susie Escarlet, who had a very similar sound to Nora. And I was just like, okay, let's see if this works. I got her to sing it. She gave me takes, and then when we listened back to it, stuff was good, but I felt like something was missing. And then Sergio and I were talking about it, and I was like, what if I had Jessica sing this too, and we went back and forth and then had them sing together during the chorus to just give it that extra oomph. And Sergio was like, I was thinking the same thing. And let's try it. And I'll see if Jessica's willing to do it. She's going to be busy, but let's see if we can squeeze it in. So we ended up doing that, and that was what it needed, was a dual vocalist on that song to just give it that extra punch. And I think it came out amazing. Like, Susie and Jessica sound fantastic together. And then Marcos does the screams in there. And, we had Marcos and a few other people do the We Are the Ones in the chorus because this is a fighting song. This is, our government, the world itself is tyrannical, right? And this is the call to action for the layman, the peasants, so to speak, to stand up, fight for your rights. Don't take things sitting down. It's time for change. That's what this song is an anthem for. Is for that, legitimately.
Absolutely, just awesome. Now I'm really pumped up now. As you see my Noruruhimo Battle Beast poster right there, and
yep.
I'm super fan. So yeah, I had the same experience with Noruruhimo. I got to meet her at that concert because it was a smaller venue. This was in 2016, I think. Whenever they toured with Sabaton, and the new lead singer of Leaves' Eyes too. But so I actually got to meet Noruruhimo. So I'm taking my daughter to their concert when they come back to the States for the next tour. So
nice.
Now with Starfall, also on our Shred Sequence playlist with Jessica Mercy and Patrick Goebel. I love the video. I already had in here Within Temptation and Delane Vibes. So you just mentioned Delane a couple songs ago, and so am I even close on that one, or how did you go with that?
I don't know if I had anything in mind at that point in time. Like I symphonic metal in general, but it was a lot of what I was channeling when I wrote that song was I was channeling the old Inaria. I was channeling Even Cethos, the incarnation of Inaria that we first did together way back in 2008 when that EP. And I kind of knew that I was writing for Jessica. I didn't think that she would ever be the one to sing the song. Because when I wrote that song, it was back in 2020. I hadn't even spoken to Jessica yet at this point. I hadn't spoken to her in almost a decade at this point. We had just went on with our lives, and I wasn't in the music scene, and we weren't in each other's lives at all. And then I wrote this, and I started putting out stuff. I got back in contact with her, and she got back in contact with me because they wanted to re-release the stuff that we did in 2008 to their Spotify. And of course, because I was one of the writers on those songs, they needed to make sure that was cool with me. So we started talking again and rekindled our friendship. And then I told her what I was doing. And she said, well, if you need any help with the project, please let me know. I'm glad to help an old friend. So I sent her the demo folder, and the two songs that she picked, the first one was Starfall for her to sing, and the second one was Farewell. And these were both songs that when I was writing them, I was picturing her voice in mind, which is crazy to me that she was able to pick that out of the lineup of 14, 15 demos that were in there. Yeah. But Starfall was just meant to be kind of like a straight symphonic metal song, definitely some Nightwish influence in there. Definitely, Delane is definitely a band that influences me. I love Westerholt's writing on that. On what he does with Delane. He's very, very talented keyboardist, and I do look up to him quite a bit. And then, just wanted that one to be more orchestral than the other ones with a big guitar sequence in there at some point. And I wanted that one to be special because the idea that I had for Starfall came from a dream that I had where I was playing like a real life virtual MMO, and I was playing as the Priestess of the Moon from Warcraft 3. And she has her ultimate move is Starfall. Is where she brings she starts killing all the mobs with this thing called Starfall. But then in the dream, because we were going through 2020 at the time, and I was so scared of the World War III imploding basically at that point in time, that I had this concept in my head: what happens if somebody gets pissed off and decides to push the button that launches all the nukes? So the idea of Starfall, the fantasy, turns into nuclear holocaust, basically, in my mind. And that's where the concept for the video came, and everything is from that one little dream that I had. You know, what happens if you play a game like that? You come out of the game to the end of the world.
Yeah, right. Just a radioactive apocalypse. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so then
the war has begun. You know, that's where those lyrics come from.
That's awesome. And then you wrap up this whole thing with Invincible by Pat Benatar. I mean,
my favorite.
How amazing.
So again, my attribute to the 80s, because I absolutely love the 80s. Back in 2008, Jessica and I talked about doing this song. We talked about doing this song back in 2008, and we talked about doing like Hearts Alone and stuff like that. Well, she had already done Alone with an aria, and I was like, well, screw it. I'm going to do Invincible. And at the time, I still hadn't gotten back in contact with her yet, and didn't really have a relationship with her when I started putting it together. So I asked Dee if she wanted to do it. And, you know, Dee just has that voice, you know, that just works for this. And so that's why another reason why I wanted her to do it is I wanted her to sing Invincible, is because she has that raw power and can go low and high when she needs to. So she agreed to do that one with us. And again, I found her through Fiverr. And it came out. I wanted to do a symphonic cover, so I added the symphonic elements, added a guitar riff, did all those things to put together. And I think it came out to be a fantastic cover, and most people that have listened to it said it's one of their favorite versions of the song.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It was so fun to listen to because I was expecting it to take off a little bit faster, and you kept the intro like it made the crescendo better. Yeah. So anyway, good.
It was by design. Because I'm such a fan of that song, and I'm such a fan of the writing of Holly Knight and Simon Climby, who wrote that piece of music for Pat, that I wanted to really pay tribute to the original, and I didn't want to change it too much, but I did want to give it that added flair that nobody was going to be expecting.
Yeah, it worked. It worked out really well. Hey, I really do appreciate you taking the time. This has been a great session. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. And
yes, sir.
I would love to talk to you, get you back on here whenever you start pushing some more stuff out. You know, your concept focus here for is focused on chivalric. Is it chivalric fantasy and history? And yeah, I like it. I mean, it seems to work. You know, with your modern sound, really relates to today's listeners. You know, again, like I've told you 100 times, your music's right up my alley. Every song that you have here, I have a new perspective. As soon as we get done here, I'm going to go back and listen to the entire set over and over and over again. Your complete album, Destiny Calling, swag available. I saw it through Spotify. I saw some bundles in there. Hopefully they're still available.
They are.
All right, I'll get a picture out on Instagram as soon as I get my swag, and we'll keep bringing it up. We'll talk about it whenever I see you release a new song. We'll throw something out there.
Cool.
I want to share your music as much as humanly possible. And thanks for sharing all of your highs, your lows. I'm glad right now you're definitely on an upswing in life. You got a great family. I couldn't be prouder of you. Thank you so very much. I'm going to give you the last closing comments here, my friend.
I'm just going to give everybody a little bit of advice, life advice and career advice and stuff like that, and say what my dad said to me. And it's simply this, don't give up on your dreams. If you know that you're destined to do something, do it, because it means that's your calling. That's what you're supposed to do. And even when things get tough and you feel like you need to quit, just know that someday everything is going to pay off for you one way or another. Never give up, never surrender. And one of the things that I've started saying to people, it's a quote that I've come up with. This is the Keith Dombrowski original, all right? And it is simply this: true strength is not discovered until it is required.
I like it. Let's leave on that note, my friend.
Yep, never doubt yourself. So true strength is not discovered until it is required.
I like that. And Keith, on that note, stay metal, my friend. Let's talk again soon. Thanks for everything.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.